Okay, so let's get started building our first little Jetpack Compose Android application. Therefore, we go to New Project, all right? And here we can finally select Empty Activity instead of No Activity. Okay, so inside of this New Project window, under Phone and Tablet, select Empty Activity, and then click on Next here. And then once you're here, you can give this application a name, and I'm going to call this one Unit Converter. I called it Currency Converter in the first video, but it's pretty much a unit converter, which can be any kind of unit, right? It can be currencies, it can be all kinds of other stuff. Everything else can stay default. We are going to use Kotlin and all of that. So let's go ahead and click on Finish. Now this will open up a new window for us, and we can close the old one. So the bank account program from our last video, we can close that. And now we can work with our beautiful little Kotlin application here. So you can see that it takes a little while because Gradle is configuring the project. So depending on the power of your machine, this could take longer or less long. So let's pause until it's done. Okay, you can see how the code is step by step being created for you, and how everything is being set up step by step. And in my case, I think it takes like a minute in total, but really depends on the hardware that you have at home. All right, there it is already. So we can see it's the same structure that we had at the very beginning in day one, where we looked at what the user interface looks like and so forth. Just as a quick summary, I am inside of the Android folder here, and I'm inside of project here, then Android, which is set up by default, but if it isn't in your case, please set it to Android. It's going to be easier to follow along. And then you have this app folder and the Gradle scripts, and what we care about for now, for most of the time, will be inside of Kotlin Java, and then the project name slash the package name that you have here. And then the UI theme folder will be there, plus the main activity. And the main activity, that's where we are going to do most of our work. So for now, we're not going to overcomplicate things. We're going to build our logic inside of the UI, which you shouldn't do too much. But at the beginning, it's totally fine. For simple applications, it's not a problem. But later on, we will see how to optimize our applications for maintainability and also for clean architecture and all of that stuff. But that would just lead way too far at the beginning, I would say. So what do we care about at the beginning? So what we care about at the beginning is our class main activity. So now you know what a class is right now, right? We learned what classes are. We didn't learn too much about what component activity means, or what inheritance means. That's something we're going to cover later on in the course, but only once we actually need it from our own by using it ourselves, right, basically, and not just using classes that use it. So then we have this override fun on create. This override, so there is basically an on create function that has a certain functionality, and we just say we want to override how it is implemented and use our own implementation of it. So what we say is, first, let's run the general implementation, but then run our own code. And that's what our own code is right now. It's set content unit converter theme. So that's the theme of our app. And then we have a surface, which is the background of our application. And then inside of that surface, we have our text called greeting Android. So now we can open up our device manager to start running our Pixel emulator and the Android AVD. And then we can already see that we do have composables. So this unit converter theme is a composable. So how did I get to this window? I hold the control key or the command key if you're using Mac, and then I click on this name. So what this does is it opens this theme.kt file, in which I can see that there is this function called unit converter theme. So a composable is nothing else than just a function, but it's a special function that has a certain behavior. Okay, so this function needs certain parameters. So for example, the theme, the dark theme, for example, it says Boolean. So is it true or false? And let me just get rid of this here. So is system in dark theme? It just checks, okay, If the system is in dark theme, then show the dark theme, otherwise show the light theme. Then the dynamic color is also a Boolean. Then we see the content, which will be a composable that we can pass in there as well. So we can pass a composable, and what that composable will do is run this piece of code here, where it takes the color scheme, it takes the dark theme and does some magic with it, and then it displays this material theme, which uses the color scheme that just was generated from this when statement, and then the typography, so basically how the text should be displayed, and sets the content of the material theme to be the content that was generated here. Okay, so that's on a very high level. Obviously, there's a lot going on in those lines of code, but I just wanted to give you a short overview of what this unit converter theme does. It basically just makes sure that the right color theme, so to speak, is used. So then the surface, that's our background of the application. So if we run our app now, and we can do so by, well, actually, I believe I should zoom out a little bit. It should be big enough still, even if I zoom out. So let me go to view and change the appearance just a tad bit. I'm going to zoom the IDE to 150. I believe that should still be good enough for you to see everything, even if you're working on a tablet, for example, to watch the course. Okay, so what we now have is our run button that will allow us to run our app on side of our Pixel 7. So I just wanted to quickly run this again. And we have seen it in day one, but as it has been already quite some time, I really just wanted to iterate back to it on it. And now we also see that you understand a few things better than you did before. Okay, so surface, as we saw, is just a function, right? So we have the live view here, the running device, and let me actually make sure that I put it into a window like so. I have a little more control over it this way. So here you see it just says hello Android here at the top of our screen. So what happens is we have this function called surface theme, and we pass parameters to it. We pass the modifier, which allows us to define how certain settings of our surfaces are going to be. We say fill max size. So the modifier has a function called fill max size, and that's the one that we're calling. So it just says, okay, the surface should fill the entire size of the screen. So basically our background will be the entire screen of the application. And then we just say which background color we want to use here, or which color for the surface we want to use. And we are using the background color based on the color scheme of our material theme, which was defined inside of the unit converter theme. So basically, if we are in white mode, in day mode or light mode, then the background should be white, otherwise it should be black. At least that's or dark gray or something like that. At least that's what I would assume. We can obviously test that by changing the theme of our device. So we could go to settings, and let me see how I do that here in Pixel. I'm not a Pixel user, but let's see if I can just search for dark theme here. Dark, there we are. We can turn on dark theme. Okay, it takes a little while. Now let's go back to our application. And you see, now it applied the dark theme. So now the background is dark, and the text also has changed to say hello Android. So inside of this theme, it includes not only the code for the background, or like the color for the background, but it also has details about the font. So which color should the font be? So instead of being black as the font was earlier, so the text was black on white background, now it's white on black background. So that's just something that I wanted to show you real quick. And then we have this function called greeting, which is also of type composable. So it's a special function, so to speak, a function that creates some user interface that can be displayed on the screen. And we pass our variable called Android to it, which says, well, which will just say hello Android, because this greeting function, if we look at it again, now that we know what functions are and how parameters work and so forth, we just understand that this function greeting now has a few parameters. So for example, the text called name and a modifier that by default is set to modifier. So we don't even have to set the modifier ourselves. But then we need a modifier inside of our text. So you see, this text is also a function, so to speak, right? It's a composable function. And you can see that it has so many parameters that we can override, but we don't need to override them. So some of them we can override, some of them we don't have. So you could add a bunch more options to our text. So a bunch more parameters to the text. So you could change the font size, the font style, font weight, font family, all of that. You could say where the text should be aligned to, but then when you look at what type you require to pass to it, you can see it's not just simple text, except for the text. There you can just pass a string. But all the others, they have more complex data types. So this data type called text unit. What is a text unit? Well, it's a class that defines what a text unit is. Okay, so it's again a prototype slash a template that defines what a text unit is, and that allows us to change what the font size should look like. But then there's this font style, which also is a class, and there's even a question mark. So there are still things we don't know yet, but that's good enough for now, or fine enough for now. We're gonna cover stuff step by step. So we see there are data types that we do understand. That's max lines and min lines, and this soft wrap, which is a Boolean. So these data types we easily understand, but everything else is a little more complicated. So we need to dive deeper into those if we want to change them. Okay, but for now, I just wanted to really show you what you understand better now that you understand what functions are, what parameters are, what classes are. And now all of this makes a lot more sense, even though you don't fully understand every single aspect of it yet. So this video has been quite long, and I really just wanted to explain you these things because I don't want you to be totally lost again and just directly start coding. I wanted to give you this quick introduction, okay? So let's go over to the next video where we're going to add stuff to our user interface.